Okay, I think you can all see my screen. Should be saying guiding vision, framework, and concepts. All right. All right, let's quickly talk about process and let you know where we are, which is really right at the halfway point of our overall process, which began back in the fall. So as you can see, we're getting near the end of the planned development phase, phase two, and already heading into phase three, which is actually beginning to test many of the ideas you're going to see in the emerging concept plan today. And coming out of this week, we'll be starting to refine the physical vision that we're sharing and really focusing on those sort of priority projects. We're going to be looking to you to provide some feedback on what ideas, what initiatives we have within the concept plan you think are the most promising and really should be the highest priorities. So that work will take the next few months, and then we'll be heading into preparing a draft master plan, which we expect to be coming back to share with you, the public, in July. I want to start just with a few slides that sort of set the context here and just let you know how we're seeing Wasaga Beach today and some of both the challenge and opportunity that is before us. And of course, let's start at the beach. Your biggest asset always will be your greatest asset, and we need to be thinking about ways of kind of ensuring it continues to be your asset, but also recognizing we can leverage it to actually bring more people to your town throughout the year. What we have to remember, note, is that with the millions of people that come to enjoy your beach every year, mostly in the summer months, they're driving here. And the space required for cars is quite significant. And of course, a long, long time ago, you parked right on the beach and realized eventually that probably wasn't such a great idea. So there was a need for a lot of parking on adjacent to the beach. This map here gives you an idea, the red areas of how much parking there is along the waterfront. It's about 30% actually of the land area along the heart of your waterfront. The kind of beach and natural features being about 40%. So we really do need to find a strategy to deal with the parking. We know we can't really reduce parking in any significant way. If anything, we probably will have to increase it as we're giving more reason for more people to come here. But it's clear we need to start moving parking some of it away from the waterfront, putting it into parking structures, and looking at taking advantage of lands in the downtown. Now, this next slide, I hope highlights the importance we're putting on the natural environment. We said this back in November, your natural features, beginning with the beach, but not ending with the beach, are your most important asset. We have to make sure we protect it. And that means staying away from the beach and the sensitive dunes and critical habitat for the piping plover. So this red line you see on the map here is what we call high constraint boundary. Azimuth, our environmental consultant, has mapped this for us based on previous studies. Later this month, they'll be going out and doing some more field work to kind of confirm this line. But this is really kind of marks the kind of no-go zone where we want to make sure we're not proposing any kind of significant development beyond things like boardwalks and trails, which in fact can actually help protect some of those natural features. Now, south of that red line, really across the waterfront, is a whole zone that where we see quite a bit of potential for change. Now, of course, within this yellow area, there are, some significant trees. There's some dune environments. There's natural features to be sure, and some of them are significant. So Azimuth's going to help us with their additional fieldwork identify significant features to protect within this yellow area. But generally, we feel like a lot of the changes we're proposing can actually work with some of those features. We're not talking about large areas that we can't get near. Back to parking. As I said, our strategy at a high level is to start to move some of the surface parking that's along the waterfront into parking structures, and particularly in the heart of Main End, to gradually take advantage of parking in the downtown, and if as necessary on those busy summer weekends, run shuttles, people movers, as people are starting to call them, to ensure people can get to the beach conveniently. Well, in addition to the yellow area, that big area for potential change along the waterfront, we see a great deal amount of opportunity in the downtown, south of the river, for change as well. We'll talk about that later in the presentation. Oop, okay. Now, in our engagement back in November, we heard a lot, and I think for those of you who have participated during Visioning Week, you will remember that we had conversations around these six themes you see on the screen, recognizing from our perspective that as a community as a whole, and particularly in the heart of your community, to be that four-season destination, to have that more complete town center, you need more places to play, more recreational opportunities, more access to recreational opportunities. You need more places for culture and entertainment. You're known historically as a big destination for music, but we think there's opportunities for even more cultural activities that will draw people to your town. Places to stay. You've got a really wonderful new hotel that should be in the ground later this year. That's going to be a game changer for the waterfront, but there will be need for really many more hotels as you become a year-round destination. More places to live, more housing. Now, at this stage, to be very clear, we're not proposing any significant housing on the waterfront. There may be opportunities for some in the main end, but on those lands on either side, we're calling the Spit and the West End or Beach Area 2, we're recognizing how valued those spaces are for their natural features and other open spaces, and really not proposing any, as you'll see, any kind of significant development of those areas. And no, to be very clear, no housing, no condos. Nevertheless, a downtown does have a lot of opportunities for mixed-use development, residential development that will kind of create that critical mass to keep businesses, to keep the open spaces lively throughout the year. So let me take you through our guiding vision statement. I'm not going to read every word here. I have to give you a heads up. There's 5 slides here with a lot of text on it. I'll leave them up so you can have a quick read of them. We will be posting this presentation so you can review this later and provide us comments later on it if you wish. But it starts with this preamble, if you will, and I'll read this one. Destination Wasaga is one of the world's great waterfront destinations, a place where nature, music, heritage, and community come together to create an extraordinary quality of life for residents and unforgettable experiences for visitors. Anchored by the world's longest freshwater beach and the breathtaking beauty of Georgian Bay, Wasaga Beach is a place where people gather to explore, celebrate, learn, and reconnect with nature. People from around the world are drawn here by the town's character and natural setting to seek fun and adventure, experience a vibrant arts and culture scene, and relax and rejuvenate. Destination Wasaga is a beach. It's a place and a community for everyone. Okay, I hope that's sounding good, but you can give us some feedback later on this, and we will explain how you can do that. But let's break down the vision now into 4 components which provide a little bit more clarity and direction on the elements and experiences that we're looking to create through the destination master plan. So the first component is a place full of nature and culture, recognizing those big assets you have, certainly in terms of the natural environment, but also the rich culture you have, going back to the War of 1812, but also thinking about the indigenous history of your town, thinking about the music history. So the bullet points here cover some of these ideas. Obviously, maintaining public access to the beach and the river really is job number one. Providing more opportunities to experience the amazing natural features you have, creating more places that interpret and celebrate your natural and cultural history, more venues for performances and other cultural events, spaces for artists and artisans and makers. Second component is focused on recreation and that idea of creating a 4-season playground. This is all about the kind of the fun and adventure we want to kind of ramp up in the town, recognizing so much of that is there with the river in Georgian Bay today in the provincial park, but we see opportunities for more boardwalks along the beach, enhanced boardwalks, which we'll talk about today, taking advantage of the trails in the provincial park, making sure that people have access to those opportunities and the equipment they need to really enjoy them. We see opportunities building on the amazing arena complex you now have for more facilities that are really bringing people here to train and for competitions. And quite simply with this last bullet, more attractions, indoor and outdoor, for fun. The third component we're calling a distinctive town to explore. And this is really getting at the future of your built environment as we see it. And I think as a community would like to see it based on what we heard in November, not just not just future buildings, but future open space as well, landscapes that are going to be improved. Part of this is building more hotels, more accommodations, and with that, more restaurants, more shops, places to gather, and more connections, parks and squares, memorable places that are designed with a distinct character and features, comfortable seating, vegetation, public art, and people go, wow, this is a really cool place to just hang out and visit. And finally, really through future development, ensuring your architecture and your landscape architecture are kind of a high quality and something that's distinctive, maybe different from a Collingwood or a Midland or a Aurelia that is distinctly Wasaga Beach. And we look for your input to guide us on what that character should be. And finally, the fourth component, a community for everyone. So this is really reinforcing that whatever we build here and create really needs to be for everyone in your community, recognizing you're an older community now, but your demographics are shifting as you attract more families. You are going to continue to become more diverse culturally and in terms of age and background. And we want to make sure we're creating places that meet the needs of everyone. Parks, recreation facilities, housing. You need more diversity of housing. And I touched on this already. You have plenty of single family homes and more town housing in your community. And you build more of those, but you also need to be building many more kind of apartment buildings for young people, young couples, the future workers, or you want to attract to support your economy. This is also about transportation, making sure you have a transportation network and facilities that make it easy for people to get around, not just by car, but also walking, cycling, and public transit. Okay, we move from the vision statement there to big moves. These is really beginning to take those ideas within the vision statement and look at how we might organize them in the heart of your community to achieve some bigger things. This is approaching planning not as just finding all these things you want and dropping them here, there, and there, but actually locating them in certain places and ensuring they have a relationship to existing places and new places that are mutually supportive. You probably heard that term synergy, though, places that come together and together create more kind of energy by just being close to each other. So if we do that, we can actually really, you end up with the whole that is greater than the sum of the parts. It's kind of a holistic approach, if you will, to town building. So I'm going to quickly go through these because I think you'll get the gist of them very quickly. And we'll move as you go further in the presentation, you'll understand what we mean by some of these. So intensify main end with new anchor destinations, accommodations, and amenities. Main end has always been the heart of your waterfront where all the action is. There's lots of opportunity, as we can all appreciate, knowing main end as it is today, being half torn up and half parking lots, half seasonal businesses, well, the remaining being seasonal businesses. And we can see so much opportunity there, and that is the place to focus hotels and fun things, and you'll see our ideas for that. Second big move is to extend main end with places to play, places to stay, and enhanced open spaces. So as you'll see, it's not about really building out east and west from main end, but actually creating places that are connected to main end, whether it's more hotels and other accommodation, new parks and other connections. But you'll get the idea of that as we go through the concept plan. Bear with me. Build new places to gather, play, and relax along an extended boardwalk. We see an incredible opportunity. People kind of love that experience of strolling along the beach, but we see that whole edge of your waterfront as really having this opportunity to be more than just a place to walk and stroll, but really have places, wider boardwalks that are places you can do things on, even in the winter, gather with friends around a fire pit, for example, join a yoga course. So there's a way to actually create these sort of outdoor living rooms on an enhanced boardwalk, places for interpreting the natural ecology of the area. 4, build up Main Street with a mix of uses to establish a true downtown. So as we mentioned, we see this opportunity to really start building that downtown, that really logically will happen with changes along Main Street. Expand programming in the provincial park to make it a unique year-round or outdoor destination. When you look at the huge part of the provincial park on the south side of the town, how close it comes to downtown or the waterfront, it just it's just begging for more programming, more activities, so that you actually offer more experiences for visitors and more amenities for the folks that live here. And then with this idea of a green discovery corridor, we connect that to the waterfront, and we'll show you what we mean by that. Finally, the big move number 7, it's a big bold one, is to actually explore the construction of an iconic pedestrian bridge at the mouth of the Wasaga River and take the two segments of your 14-kilometer beach and connect them to create that physical connection, but much more than that, create something that becomes a really symbol of the town, a place, a destination where you simply want to go, enjoy the views, enjoy the architecture of the bridge, watch boats come in and out. And Dennis will kind of take you through the more detailed concept that's emerging for that. Okay, let's move now to what's we're calling the 10-year strategic framework. So what we've recognized is that, and this is our experience planning in a lot of places, that you really do want to focus on the next 10 years because a lot will change in the next 10 years. It might be appropriate to update a plan after that kind of length of time. There's also a need to really get going on things and to really pursue a lot of things soon and maintain that momentum. So we've got a 10-year focus here. You'll see later we are looking long-term beyond that. That's appropriate to have that long-term vision. But we've developed this 10-year strategic framework, and it takes the big moves and it gets a little more specific about where we see future land uses, future open space opportunities, future connections. Let's start with the beach again and those natural features that need to be protected. The framework, as you will see in the slides to come, is very much focused on those areas for change, but we want to recognize with the framework that there is the beach, there are the dunes, there is the critical piping plover habitat as areas to be protected. Logically, you're going to want to focus in the very near term on completing those projects that are underway, the reconstruction of Beach Drive, the Sunray Hotel, the second Sunray Hotel, other development. The Sunray Group is looking on the lands that they've secured from the town, and Stonebridge and their development, mixed-use development underway now, very exciting. Let's see that be built out in the next few years, if not sooner. Beyond that, the next moves we see in the main end to focus on are creating these new anchor destinations. There's $25 million coming from the province to really bring the Nancy Island Historic Site up to something really quite fabulous, restore some of elements that are there today, and build, as we see it, a new kind of Nancy Museum, we're calling it, as one destination. Another one is the idea of a multi-purpose art center or music hall, if you will. The Dardanella, we keep calling it the Dardanella 2.0. Similar idea, contemporary version, but that has that same kind of energy to it, the same sort of mix of uses, restaurants kind of flowing out from the edges of it, but inside a multi-purpose kind of performance space, meeting space. So we'll talk more about this, but we're quite excited about this idea. We think it's really going to bring a lot of life to the waterfront in all seasons. The other idea is about an amusement deck. I won't say much more about that. Dennis can kind of take you to more specific ideas, but this is a place building out from Beach Drive that will kind of bring back a lot of the fun that used to define your waterfront. And then beyond that, it's a matter of kind of filling in the gaps at main end with more hotels, more kind of indoor and outdoor experiences that enhance this kind of fun zone, as we're calling it. And again, Dennis will kind of take you through the specific ideas. And part of this fun zone we see, or the main end, is the idea of a transient river marina. Let's find a place where boaters can come in and just pull up a dock and enjoy the restaurants. the bars, the other kind of attractions that we have in Main End. Now, looking out of the spit, here's where we need to be a bit sensitive given the kind of significant natural features here, but we do see opportunities for more accommodation that's sensitive to those natural features, potentially an amphitheater for some outdoor performances, and we've got this idea of glamping. Kind of think of it not as sort of a noisy kind of campground, but something that's a bit of a very eco type of resort that's very low impact. And the idea I mentioned of an enhanced boardwalk is fundamental to connecting all those places. And this then ties in the potential pedestrian bridge and maybe even a marina out in the bay that might come with that. Looking west now, we're calling it the West End, but based on conversations we've been having over the last couple of days, we realize a lot of people living in the west end of town refer to their area as the West End. So we're probably going to have to change West End to something else. But for now, the West End, Beach Area 2, as you really know it today. Here again, we're looking at not significant changes, reorganizing parking to make it to kind of free up some of the land for open space improvements so we can create what we're calling a culture park. And again, Dennis will describe this in a bit more detail. And again, as I mentioned, enhance the boardwalk. On the other side of the river, this may not, building out Main Street will take some time, but we see starting that in the coming years with some catalyst developments right at Beck Street on town-owned land and property across the road where we know there is strong development interest. And as well, really taking something at the gateway to Main Street, perhaps more new civic buildings, new commercial buildings to really define that entry to your downtown. The provincial park, we see an opportunity in the near term to enhance the existing Nordic Center with more facilities to bring more people to really appreciate what you've got there in all seasons. And maybe glamping. And we're not too sure this location where we're suggesting glamping grounds is the most appropriate given the features there and the wetlands and so forth among the parabolic dunes. But maybe if not there, then elsewhere in a much larger area. We'll come back to this toward the end of the presentation. Now, as some initial steps towards building this discovery corridor, we have this idea of a green pier that connects that provincial park to the river. It's taking access road and the space within that public right-of-way to create a kind of linear park, if you will, that goes right out to create a kind of platform overlooking the river that then gives you a place to anchor a bridge, a new pedestrian bridge over to Nancy Island. And then with the improvements to the Nancy Museum, as we mentioned, Culture Park, which you'll hear about, that kind of creates that discovery corridor. Coming back to parking, all right? I want to make sure you know that we're thinking about parking pretty regularly, that with every change here that we understand the impact it's going to have on parking, and we're planning for the replacement of parking. As I mentioned earlier, and this diagram kind of gives you a clearer picture of we're looking at taking parking, relying more on some land in downtown for public parking, also looking at more opportunities for on-street parking. This is what you see in a successful four-season town. Parking comes in little lots, it comes in parking structures, it comes in a lot of on-street parking, which can be very convenient and accommodate quite a few spaces. Okay, I'll take a break and hand it over to Dennis now to actually take us to the emerging concept plans for these 5 focus areas as we're calling them. So, Dennis, I'll keep steering, but over to you.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Good evening, everyone. Next slide, please. So as Tim mentioned, we've been working quite hard on trying to figure out the correct DNA to essentially establish an economic and cultural renaissance for Main End. This was the beating heart at one time. It will be again if we get the first investments right. And to start off, the first one, next slide, Tim. And as Tim mentioned, this is this notion of bringing the Dard back to life. It takes center stage. We do think, music is synonymous with Wasaga. and it's kind of critical to bring that back as a major presence on the beach. We do think it has to be in the spirit of the Dard, though. This isn't just a kind of single use performance center, but it would be a mixed use facility. You can imagine that be uh, restaurants and cafes and other services that are integrated into the facility, so it becomes a bit more multifaceted, much in the way that the spirit of the original Dardanella acted as a anchor on the beach. We then, on the next slide, there we go. We also think it's quite vital to have the community right at the waterfront. And we're calling the next destination anchor the Arts and Tech Incubator and Market Building. It's a long title, basically to say we'd like to provide some infrastructure to provide workshops, studios, production spaces, perhaps seasonal use for market uses. But this is very much a facility, a flexible facility that has the community here making things of the community, for the community, and for wider audiences abroad. The next destination anchor on the next slide is this notion of a play-based museum. And we do think children and families also need to take center stage. These are educational places. They're fun. They're about having a really solid place for children to interact with families and other institutions to provide educational services. We think this is actually a vital thing. It could also talk about the history of Wasaga and other perhaps the archives come here, et cetera. But there's a lot of potential to create a very strong narrative on the waterfront. Now, these all front what we're calling the amusement deck, which is as expansion of Beach Drive. We do think there needs to be a large, flexible public space right on the beach. We're trying to create more critical mass in the main end proper. So this is the place where you could have your festivals, you could have your Rib Fest, you could also have carnival style programming, but it's very much an engaging place on the beach, large enough to take larger crowds. The interior spaces we feel are more intimate and scaled to be a bit more protective for different microclimates. We know as the seasons change, we'd like to kind of create more hospitable environments. So we're using the future developments to provide protection and try to generate, again, a local microclimate that works. Pedestrian focused, walkways, etc. So very much a different character than the large spaces at the beach. On the next slide, Tim. Yeah, on this one. And working, northeast from the amusement deck, we see an adventure trail and park. So it's really extending that fun programming. We're also using the programming to say, well, we need parking. We're suggesting providing a structured parking deck in this area, but we would like to wrap it with very much active activities. So you can see on some of the images here, there's the potential for climbing walls, there's tree zip lines, rope courses, etc. But it really does extend the energy of the amusement deck and takes us right across to the river. And if you go to the next slide. And this is where we imagine, again, this notion of really taking the energy of the river, getting boaters to come right to main end, coming up, activating it, being clients to the commercial spaces, and really pulling the water and the river uses right up to main end. We see the structured parking idea allows us to have infrastructure to wrap it. So we think there might be a marina, perhaps clubhouse, perhaps some food, engaging with the river, bringing the river life up to main end again. And this all works with a redesigned Janetta Street and a river boardwalk with new transient slips. On the next slide. And again, a quick character sketch of what this could be like. You can kind of see Beach Drive expanding into the large amusement pier. We're showing this one with carnival activities, but it could very much be other festival programs. We're also showing this notion that we could have all season programming. So the indoor carousel idea or some other structures that say there can be pavilions here that can allow the place to be visited and occupied even in the deepest of winter. And again, the notion that, oh, sorry, Tim, if you go back on that. Thank you. And that, again, the destination uses are also, there's quite a bit of hotel, boutique hotel accommodations here. Again, supporting year-round use. And now we're going to move on to the spit. So as we move from the main end, you can see we've prioritized the public spaces of the spit right down to the river mouth, and as a series of episodes and destinations that create attractions as we go to the river mouth. So we'll go to the first one. Go to the next slide, Sim. Thank you. So the idea of creating an eco resort, something that is very much integrated into basically new tourism trends, but also taking full advantage of the natural environment, integrating accommodation. This can be scaled up and scaled down. We think it could also be accommodating, eco-interpretive places where you learn about the geology and the nature of the spit, all integrated into a strategy of accommodation. And then as we move along, we do think that, again, the music being synonymous with Saga, can we create an iconic destination for larger festivals and performances? So here we imagine a stage that gives you the regular infrastructure that's needed for attracting all sorts of acts and performances. But we're showing this image in San Diego, which shows sort of fixed seating and a flat land. But we do think it's very much more of a landscape strategy here, where the seating could be integrated into a landscape forward approach, where seating can be integrated into dunes or more rolling hills, et cetera. So it could be more of a natural performance amphitheater. And again, here is an idea. So going from the sort of eco resort zone, going to a stage area that is wrapped with very distinctive a landscape evolution of the current kind of foredune habitats. And again, these are all connected with the boardwalk systems that we're about to show you on the next slide. If you go to the next slide, Tim. Thank you. Both on the riverfront and on the beach side, we do feel it's very important to improve the infrastructure for getting around. So essentially, these are boardwalks that are well integrated with the natural environment. At moments, they can be more generous, at other times narrow, but it's basically creating a full circuit to experience different components of the landscape as we move around the spit. This also centers on, oh, sorry, Tim, as Tim mentioned on the previous slide, there is the opportunity to say this could also integrate well with a glamping idea where there is a very sensitive way of providing accommodation that is woven well into nature and has a soft impact, but as a anchor use towards the end of the spit. If you go to the next slide, and as we approach the mouth of the river, and this is a big idea, but we heard a lot in our conversations that river management is crucial. The rapid silting of the mouth is very hard to kind of manage from the boating perspective. Obviously, the silting also creates habitat issues. So we are starting to investigate whether or not we can create two groins at the mouth of the river that help manage river levels and river flow. Now, once you have the groins as an infrastructure needed for river management, it's a small leap to think, well, let's take advantage of it. And this is where we could get the idea of creating a spectacular new pedestrian bridge that connects both sides of the community and completes the 14 kilometers. And again, there's lots of examples, beautiful examples around the world. We're showing the Humber and one in Edmonton, but there are elegant ways of weaving a pedestrian bridge crossing over larger spans. Next. And then once you have that infrastructure, is there the potential to start creating a potential marina at the river mouth? We are just starting to investigate this, but this would put Wasaga on the circuit of destinations for different craft and become a again another source of visitors, income, and direct connection to mainland from this location. Okay, we're going to go on to the Main Street corridor. Thank you. So obviously, in the everyone desires a renaissance of Main Street, a great, beautiful boulevard that um, is rejuvenated with life and activity. And what their approach here is to kind of look at two particular zones to catalyze change over the entire length. The first one is at River and Main Street, and we really see this as being this is the gateway, this is the front door to the kind of classical approach to the beach. We do think this needs to have a lot more presence, a lot more investment. There's great opportunity here to kind of have more of a more civic uses, perhaps institutional, perhaps more commercial use and residential mix, which kind of completes the Stonebridge commercial corridor and starts to extrovert the Stonebridge corridor to the street as a way of entering into along Main Street. The next critical location we think is at Beck in Maine. There are two parcels there that are coming online for change, and we think this could be a really interesting catalyst for change. This area we're calling it Main Street Village. We'd like to consider keeping the small scale shops and building types that are there and enhancing that. So have more infill at that scale, create more of a local mom and pop shop feel, give more entrepreneurial space here that really promotes a village type character. If you go to the next slide, Tim. And this is sort of how we see it. We can imagine that, you know, this portion of Main Street could have further landscape treatments along the street, but that there is a certain scale and land use that really start to promote a village feel, but a very locally driven. No Boston pizzas, more mom and pop. Next slide. So I'm going to take you over to the Discovery Corridor, and Tim mentioned this. So the Discovery really starts at the provincial park, and the provincial park is an incredible asset. We constantly, every time we visit now, we wonder why it's not used more. It is a recreational designation, so we're suggesting that has more active programming. So there is a notion of expanding the Nordic Center, having more facilities, especially for winter uses, obviously, for skiing and for snowshoeing and other winter activity, and that this is associated as a it can grow into a bigger destination, perhaps a spa. Um, excuse me, and perhaps there's winter glamping and perhaps all season glamping, but it is more of a recreational destination. And from here, we are work our way towards the river and this notion of the green pier. So there is a clear opportunity with access road to convert this into what we're saying is a linear park, a green connection that extends the provincial park right to the river. We can use the linear park to give us elevation and spring across the river. This is where the notion of a new pedestrian bridge that connects us to Nancy Island. So Nancy Island now becomes part of the provincial park feeling and this green system that takes us to the beach. And as we cross, we go to the next slide, Tim. As we cross, there is an incredible new destination, which is the Nancy Museum facility. And this facility is being, you know, the province is already committed to delivering it. We're starting to look at what kind of different programming can be associated with the museum. Like, do you move the archives that were located in town hall into the museum, et cetera? There's lots of opportunity to become an educational center and a cultural center. And as we move from the museum investment along Third Street, we do see again carrying through this notion of a very powerful green connection to the beach, this notion of a culture park, and this is where the community is community scaled. It has a lot of infrastructure necessary for locals, but also visitors alike. So we can imagine play, small theaters, outdoor theater spaces, some concession kiosks, etc. Um, and this takes us right to the beach. It also is an opportunity to say, is there an indigenous narrative that goes right from the provincial park right to the beach, and can we program moments and tell the story of the indigenous use of lands here for time immemorial, so we can start to bring that into the narrative building of the landscapes. And this is the kind of the sketch of this potential where, you can see from the top from the provincial park improvements, there's a site where town hall is currently and the library. There's an up it's a very substantial parcel that might be a very great location for growth and change. We're showing it as a potential hotel resort here that makes a lot of sense when you look at Nancy and the museum in combination. But the green pier gives you the elevation to get the clearances you need for navigation along the river, gets you over to the island, get to the new museum destination. You walk down Third Street towards the culture park, and that takes you to a great overlook plaza at the beach. Go to the next slide, Tim. And then there's this notion that along the beach, we do see beach two getting lots of investment from a boardwalk perspective. So how can we integrate and engage with the four dune spaces, creating great and beautiful promenades that are programmed with necessary and much needed kind of community amenities. So there could be splash pads, there could be future concession spaces, there are resting platforms, viewing platforms, sunset platforms. Quite a beautiful addition to extending Beach Drive towards the southeast. And here we're showing one depiction about how that can be implemented. Obviously, trying to retain quite a substantial amount of the character of Beach 2 area, but providing a lot of the new infrastructure necessary for this part of Beach 2. But in the long term, can this provide even more? Is there more need for more concession, more washroom, et cetera? We know we've heard a lot about that, but we can also start providing more recreation spaces, tennis, pickleball, et cetera, recreational spaces, playgrounds. It needs to kind of give more back to the community from an infrastructure perspective. And this is where I'm going to pass it back to Tim, but this is where we wound up. There's lots on the plan, and we'd like to take you further on with Tim.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Dennis. Yeah. I think I warned you. We had a lot to share with you. We're just about finished with the presentation, so bear with us for a little bit longer, and then we'll open it up for your questions and comments. One of I mentioned we're focusing on the next 10 years, but we are thinking longer term and recognizing that there will be ongoing changes. So as the heart of your city will always, frankly, be changing. That's just the way a town center works and sustains itself. So thinking long term, this is that 10-year strategic framework I showed you earlier. As we look longer term, where we see opportunities is in the beach area too, and out on the spit. And again, for kind of sensitive developments, hotels for sure, kind of eco-friendly hotels, as well as potentially other kind of attractions, if you will, anchors that will draw more people here. And it's hard to predict what those are. We have a good idea of what we want to try and plan for the next decade. But what we see is actually, particularly in the beach area too, the West End, is taking that idea of a culture park and as Dennis just showed you, making it really a true community park with a lot more amenities in it, a lot more usable open space. So kind of reorganizing the parking that's there and freeing up some sites for compatible development. And then on the spit, there again, likely kind of maintaining parking for visitors year round, but also thinking about even more accommodations. Um, Potentially beyond that 10, 15 years, there's going to be ongoing opportunities in the heart of downtown, south of the river, for mixed use development, commercial development, residential development along Main Street, some of the areas adjacent to Main Street. Um, that just naturally, when you kind of build up a downtown, that kind of want to evolve. And the provincial park, we see, as you'll see in a moment, lots of ideas to explore in the next 10 years. Some of them may take longer than 10 years. And again, we see that being a place that continues to evolve with more and more amenities. And I do want to point out that, as you can see here in the light purple color, we haven't said there's not going to be change south of Mosley Street. Those are really pretty much all mostly private lands, many of them occupied by resorts, motels. And what we see happening there is landowners recognizing as the waterfront as a whole in downtown improves, they'll be encouraged to, maybe spruce up their existing motel, for example, or maybe sell their site for a higher and better use, for a hotel, for even a residential building, because those lands would be appropriate for a whole range of things that just bring more life to the waterfront in all seasons. So we're looking beyond 10 years. We're also looking beyond the core of the community. This really, for the purposes of where we are now in our master planning process, really is about the ideas for the larger provincial park on the south side of town. It is quite huge, and it's a recreation park, classified as a recreation park by the province. So it's really meant to be accommodating a range of uses that attract people and allow them kind of really explore nature. And typically that would include camping, increasingly more glamping or yurts, those kinds of structures that make camping more enjoyable and outside of the summer season. You've got amazing trails there for skiing. This is a destination today for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. Why not some cabins within the provincial park where folks can spend a night, 2 nights, and then enjoy the more of the trails over the coming days. Paddle in campsites. This is not exactly going to be Algonquin Park, but why not let people launch a canoe or kayak and take some camping gear and find a spot along the river where they can spend a night. So these are some of the ideas related to accommodation. And then we have other ideas that are just about other amenities and landmark features like a viewing tower to complement Monument Hill. Maybe up on Monument Hill, someone was describing the other day of just sort of building a really wonderful platform so people can go up there and not just have to sit in the sand and have a picnic, but can really have a place to hang out for a little bit. Treetop trekking in a forest, that's a pretty natural thing you see in actually increasing number of forested areas in Ontario. Okay, that is where we are. So again, thank you for your attention as we've gone through all that. Um, we are now going to kind of open things up and hear from you. I think we really want to hear any questions you might have about anything we've shared with you over the last close to an hour now. And then if you have some comments for us. Now, I just like to hear you see some instructions. So we're going to receive your questions in one of two ways. You can put up your hand and just, you'll be unmuted and you can give us your question out loud. Or if you prefer, you can just type a question into the chat function. Um, and so we'll do that for a while. We'll see how many questions and comments you have, and then we'll conclude the meeting by sharing some other ways that you can provide feedback. So with that, what I'm going to do for the moment is just go back to the kind of overall concept plan here, leave that up on the screen, and invite your questions.
One question that came through the chat during the presentation, which I think you touched on a bit, Tim, but maybe there's another summary you can give. But could you address how many lanes are envisioned for cars to access the area, as well as parking, and how traffic would be managed kind of over time?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, that's that's a question that doesn't surprise us because obviously when we're looking to bring more people to your town and recognizing, we know that there are congestion issues now, particularly along River Road, and in the summertime, those busy summer weekends, it gets pretty jammed up, especially when you have those big events. Uh, Before I kind of answer the question about number of lanes and whatnot, and you have to forgive us, we don't have a transportation planner with us tonight, but I think I can speak for him. We have to point out that, our goal is certainly to have more people coming to town throughout the year. And that does mean perhaps more people on those busy summer weekends, although it's a little bit hard to imagine that many more than already are coming. You've got more than 2 million, 90% of those folks are coming in those summer months. What our goal here really is to get more people coming during the summer and staying overnight, right? And coming throughout the year and staying overnight. And when you think about that changes travel patterns a little bit. First of all, people coming to visit in the winter, spring, fall, not nearly going to be at the same numbers that you get in the summer. And I think that's quite obvious. No matter how many more attractions you add here, it's not going to have the draw of the beach on a hot summer weekend. So those volumes will be lower in the off season. Also, when you've got people that you're coming and are coming or staying for a couple of days, maybe a week or whatnot, they're not necessarily coming, Saturday morning to get to the beach to enjoy a full day at the beach. So the traffic will be kind of spread out throughout those weekend days a little bit. So that's going to help. So we're actually not at the moment, and then we're still again halfway through our process. So part of our testing of these ideas is considering transportation impacts. But the idea is that our feeling is your road network is going to have the capacity generally to accommodate this. Now, there will need to be improvements at certain intersections to better manage that congestion. We are looking at an enhanced active transportation network that makes it easier for people to, park a little further away from the waterfront, get there by walking or maybe jumping on a bike share, for example, and for make it easier for people living in our community to get to the beach and avoid having to drive there, particularly in those busy summer weekends. So those are some of the strategies we have. And by distributing parking, as I mentioned earlier, around downtown, that will actually spread the traffic out a little bit more. Andrew, looks like you want to maybe add another comment here.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Just a couple additional comments. So we do monitor car usage on roads. We look at volumes in peak seasons, off seasons, et cetera. What our studies show us is that Main Street itself has a lot of capacity to handle more cars than it does today. And for those who haven't been in Wasaga Beach for a long period of time, the volume of cars today, while it may seem like a lot, is nowhere near what we used to receive. So we're averaging on in today approximately 2 million visitors a year. In our height, we were 4 to 5 million. So and the infrastructure that we have today was able to handle that. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to accept that. We're always looking for ways to improve things. We're implementing some infrastructure changes right now down at the beachfront, introducing roundabouts, et cetera. That will help the area function a little more smoothly, more efficiently, both for pedestrians and cars. Makes it easier to make left turns, et cetera. But there's also planning for a third bridge that would cross the river halfway between the two current bridges. The best way to ease congestion is provide multiple routing options. And a third bridge will do a lot to actually take some of the pressure off of Moseley and help people navigate around the town. So we are actively looking and monitoring this. So hopefully that helps a little bit with the answer. But again, we're going to look at things that we can do to improve the situation over the long term.
Yeah, I'll just add one other idea that really resonated with a lot of people over the last couple of days is, the idea of a shuttle. You might even think about it just a little, people keep calling it kind of a people mover, right? A kind of tram on wheels that just takes people around the heart of your community. And as you create more kind of destinations, places to hop out on and off, we think that kind of thing will be quite popular. And what that allows you to do is get people kind of parking maybe quite far away from like in the high school parking lots, for example, or something like that. And people can just jump on that and get to the beach, get to wherever they want to go. Now we know families with all that kind of picnicking gear, they might want to get down to the beach and drop all their stuff off. So we'll accommodate that, of course. But you know, as Andrew said, providing many ways of getting around and many uh, modes of travel is part of the key to kind of managing the traffic.
We had another question come through the chat, Tim, which is what building heights are being considered.
Very good question. We are, that is something that we're going to be exploring in the next phase of work, but we're kind of starting with the assumption that really Wasaga Beach is a town, and it's not a place where we're looking for high rises, for example. This is not, we're not, you don't want to become a berry. Um, so I think generally for much of and I think you got the sense from some of the 3D sketches that Dennis showed you is that we're looking at buildings generally being not terribly tall, many of them being in the kind of 3 to 4 story range. The exception will be hotels. There's going to be, and you'll see this with the Marriott, the Sunray Group's hotel is going through the rezoning process now is, these are going to want to be at a height that is really going to take advantage of where they are. Certainly understand the impacts it may have on its surroundings, but may get to more of a mid-rise height. So, 6 to 8 stories, which we think is very compatible based on our experience with lower buildings. So I don't know that you're going to see a lot of buildings at that height because the challenge you run into, the more height you have, the more um, density, floor area you have in a building, it really will likely generate more parking. And we know there'll be challenges putting parking underground. So we don't want to create a surface parking problem by having a whole bunch of tall buildings that require large sites and large parking lots. What we want to do is create a really kind of compact, walkable area, particularly downtown on the waterfront. And that's likely going to mean keeping buildings at a pretty moderate height. Again, some of those hotels we'll make sure I think we'll try to make sure that they're beautifully designed are going to pop out maybe a little bit taller, but that'll be a good thing because it'll make those hotels places that people really want to come and to enjoy the amazing views, particularly out to the bay. Andrew.
Yeah, sorry, I keep jumping in. Yeah, I think the heights that we're looking at are no different from what was historically down on the beachfront. If you go and look at a lot of the historical photos, there were three, four, five. I believe there was actually a six-story building on the beachfront in the good old days. Um, Obviously, they didn't last long. They weren't built to last, but we did have some taller buildings down there. The building that was just built by Stonebridge is approximately 4 stories in height. That's a good scale. We think that's a good, comfortable scale for the waterfront. If you get too tall, then your construction techniques change. You move from wood into steel and concrete, and your costs go up exponentially. But also, people get a little disconnected from the street. So, 4 to 6, what you find is people tend to walk more and engage more with the public realm. So, I think you're going to see a lot of 4 story with the occasional for a 6, maybe even an 8 for a signature building. But overall, it's really a low to mid rise scale. No tall towers. Our neighbors to the west are looking at some height. I think they've got a significantly tall building planned for their waterfront, but we don't envision that for Wasaga Beach.
You are right about that, Andrew. Yes.
A couple more questions have come through the chat. The first one is, are there any current plans for the town to incentivize the current hotel and Stonebridge developments to assimilate to this plan?
Andrew, you want to take that one?
So I'm not sure exactly what that means to assimilate to the plan. Um, we have worked very closely with both Stonebridge and Sunray. And I think we believe that this plan and their plans work quite well together. In fact, I know Stonebridge and Sunray have had multiple conversations amongst themselves to ensure that the quality, the look, feel of the architecture actually works together. At the end of the day, while we're not forcing everyone into a master plan with a control architect or anything like that, we want to make sure that this overhaul development works well together. So I think both Stonebridge and Sunray are very much in line with that, and we're constantly talking with them about the style, the architectural style, etc. So there's no incentives required because they're just doing it because they understand that that's just good design, and it makes for an overall better product.
Yeah, and I could further to that, just we're recognizing that those projects that a lot of planning has taken place, and they are responding to the opportunities that they have with their sites, putting buildings on the beachfront in the case of the Sunray Hotel, and as well with a second hotel planned on Moseley, a banquet facility in their heart of the site. The reality is to support that banquet facility, they'll need a parking structure on their site, but it'll be a relatively kind of compact one. So, they've come up in our mind with a good plan that we can respond to with everything that we've been showing. So, to be very clear, that purple funny shaped building in the middle of Main End there, that reflects the what generally what the Sunray Group are proposing for their lands, and you can see we're reflecting also the Stonebridge plan too.
Great. The next question, and there's one to follow. The first is, how will the plan protect piping plover nesting areas on the beach? Will fencing and protected zones remain, and could they be expanded?
Yeah, good question. Not a surprising question as well, because we know the concern about protecting that habitat. The provincial park has been, doing going to great efforts and recruiting volunteers and to help them protect the piping plover habitat. It's the town's intention. I know Andrew's going to jump in on this, is to continue that practice. We have the NVCA actually parallel to our work and informing our work and vice versa, looking at both short-term and long-term, what's the right strategy to ensure that we're continuing to protect those habitats and even maybe enhance them. Let's look at opportunities to ensure that the piping plovers that come, which aren't many every year, are surviving, their fledglings are surviving, and we are over time attracting even more piping plovers. So, I think that there's measures in place, but when we talk about enhanced boardwalk, I think that idea, which may include some elevated portions of the boardwalk that keep people even further away from and discouraging them from trampling over the dunes, is part of that strategy. But we are looking for the NVC study that's underway, we'll be wrapping up in the summer as well, in parallel with our work, will give us kind of more direction. But absolutely, there will be opportunities if it's necessary for more roping off of areas. But we think, from what we understand, it's been quite effective what the province is doing, ensuring that there are people out there to educate people and help them, ensure they're staying away from those nesting areas. Andrew, you want to add something?
Yeah, I want to be very clear. Our approach for the summer of 2026 is not going to look much different from what you've seen in years past. We actually today, Birds Canada, who has worked with Ontario Parks, the province of Ontario, for years to protect the piping plovers, was on the grounds. We had a team from the town that met with Birds Canada. Birds Canada shared their training with us, their lessons learned from working with the province over the years. So that collaboration is in play. We will be working with Birds Canada throughout the season. We understand that the plovers are making their way here. A group have landed in Michigan, and there's two or three birds that we understand are headed our way. That's information that Birds Canada has shared with us. So they should be arriving any day now. And Birds Canada, quite frankly, is paid by the federal government to come in and assist. And that's part of their job, is to assist with the protection of nests, the signage, the roping, cages, etc. So that partnership will exist this summer. We look forward to working with Birds Canada and looking forward to learning from the study that NVCA prepares to see if there are things that we can do to improve the success rate of plovers breeding in Wasaga Beach. For those who aren't aware, the plovers actually much more land in Michigan than they do on Georgian Bay. We get 3, 2, 4, it changes every year. Michigan, they'll get 70, 80, 100. So their program is really thriving. We're taking a look at their program to understand what they're doing, and are there things that we can be doing in Wasaga Beach to improve the success rate in Wasaga Beach. But I want to assure everyone, we're following best practices. We are listening and learning from Birds Canada. And we're in discussions with the federal government to understand what they can do also to support the program.
Thanks, Andrew. Question through the chat on housing affordability. How does the waterfront plan address affordable housing needs in Wasaga? Is affordable housing a priority, or would that be through a separate initiative?
Well, I can start here. Andrew might want to jump in because I don't want to speak. Well, Andrew, why don't you start? Because I think maybe you could address that question about, is affordable housing a priority? I think I know the answer, but why don't you respond?
Absolutely. Affordable housing absolutely is a priority for the municipality, as it is for every municipality across North America. We are undertaking a number of initiatives on the affordable housing front. First is working with the county. The county is responsible for housing. We have just over 100 units on Zoo Park Road that were built a couple years ago. We are looking at bringing an additional 100 plus units on stream within the year. So we're quite excited about those additional housing units that are going to be built by the County of Simcoe. There is also currently affordable housing at the beachfront at 7th Lane. I know the county is looking at that development as well. In addition to that, we will be looking at things like secondary suites, additional dwelling units, etc. There's a whole menu of things that we can do from a planning perspective to encourage more affordable housing. Our short-term accommodation program that just rolled out recently, the interesting thing about that, if you've followed what has happened in Collingwood, when you get into tourist destinations like Wasaga and Collingwood, a lot of investors will buy up units with the intention of renting to tourists because they can charge a lot of money for people to come to stay for 1 week, couple days, 2 weeks, etc. Far more than the average resident can afford to pay for a unit. Collingwood introduced a short-term accommodation program, and what they saw is a dramatic shift from short-term rentals for seasonal investor type to more long-term rentals that actually helps locals, workers, etc., who need more affordable places to live. So they actually saw a 75% transition from short-term to long-term rental. We've introduced our program in Wasaga Beach. I anticipate there will be a bit of a shift here that will help affordability. So a number of things that we are doing to help the situation, working in collaboration with not only the county, but with our immediate neighbors. With respect to the beachfront itself, we are not proposing affordable housing on this section of the beachfront. And the reason for that is you're not seeing a lot of housing, period. The province is not wanting to see housing built on these lands. So we're looking at other uses, and Tim and Dennis have walked you through what those are, primarily accommodations, hotels, etc. So we won't be pursuing affordable housing in this development on the beach. We could very well look at affordable housing opportunities in the downtown on Main Street, in close proximity to Main Street. you tend to want to put affordable housing in close proximity to transit. And for a small town, we've got a pretty decent transit system that provides good service to that area. So we are actively looking for opportunities. There's no silver bullet to solve this issue. It's a multi-pronged approach. And we're working multiple avenues to try and make it easier for people to find housing.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Andrew said is that as he just acknowledged and I mentioned earlier, we do see lots of opportunity for significant residential growth in the downtown along, particularly on the Main Street corridor, and that will take different forms. What we'll be looking at in the next phase of work is what kind of incentives could maybe be put in place to encourage that redevelopment period, but within that redevelopment level, good levels of affordability, whether they meet the true definition of affordable or not. But there's also that question of attainable housing. So thinking about who's going to want to be living near downtown, what's their income level, what kind of rents can they afford to pay, or prices can they afford
And
to pay
actually,
per
Tim,
unit.
one other thing I would add is we're starting to see a bit of a shift in Wasaga Beach. We have quite a number of developers coming forward with proposals for purpose-built rental housing. That's new for Wasaga Beach, not new in the province, but it's new for Wasaga Beach. So that's a good trend to see that the market is there for some affordable housing. And part of that is incentives that are being offered at the federal level that are making some of these projects more viable. So we look forward to seeing some of those get built. And again, that will provide more opportunity for folks.
Yeah, incentives, as we can see, are coming in and making a difference.
All right. We have a question from Kevin and then one in the chat. Kevin, I'm going to click a button to ask you to unmute. I think you have to accept that. So here we go.
Thank you. My question's related to the significant fishery that we have outside of Wasaga Beach and through the river, which is rainbow and salmon, but also the river mouth and a little further out, lake trout and whitefish, etc. So I'm wondering if there's considerations for and what the considerations would be for the preservation of that fishery and in actuality improvement of habitat as well. For example, the mouth of the Sturgeon Creek, which used to have a significant rainbow and salmon run that has been decreased, in fact, eliminated, I think, because of the lack of any improvement around the marina there that leads to the mouth. And in doing so, we do attract a lot of fishers to the area. That's a significant potential for us, and I'm wondering what opportunities you're exploring in that area as well. Thank you.
Want me to start, Tim?
Sure, go for it, Andrea.
Yeah, very important question, and I know we have a very active fishery area. We're gonna take a good look at the river, the mouth of the river out in the bay as part of our analysis around this marina. One of the issues we're trying to understand and address, I'm sure you're well aware, we have a silting issue at the mouth of the river where the silt coming down the river tends to build up. This year we haven't got the barge out yet to actually measure the water levels, but what I am hearing is they're quite shallow. That's a very important issue for us to understand and get ahead of, because if the river mouth gets too shallow, then you require federal and provincial permits to get out there and dredge the river, which can be very disruptive to fish habitat. So it's something that we want to try and address. And Dennis and Tim walked you through some of the strategy around the mouth of the river. That's part of the reason why we want to take a look at this. There's a whole sustainability angle here, and trying to address habitat for fish as part of all of this. So as part of our due diligence, we will absolutely be digging down a little bit deeper to understand impacts to fish habitat and what we can do to improve that situation. Sturgeon River there, etc. What we can do to help that situation. So we are going to look at it. I don't think we have all the answers today on that, but we are actively going to look into that a little bit better and see if we can improve the situation. I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add there, Tim.
Yeah, I'm not, I can't really speak to the Sturgeon Creek, but having spoken to the Sturgeon Marina owners, we understand one of the issues they're confronting is that the silt coming down the creek and perhaps silt coming from the river as well have really clogged up the mouth of the creek to the point where they 70 of their slips can't even be accessed. So I suspect that is, affecting the fish as well. Fish need some water. Um, and yeah, to Andrew's point, we're kind of approaching the idea, this concept at the mouth of the river as an opportunity to perhaps create even more fish habitat, which typically happens when you build a marina or other kind of structures as we're proposing. Recognizing that the river is an important spawning ground for salmon, for sturgeon, and we'll need to make sure that that we're not adversely affecting that condition. And that's why we do have azimuth environmental and a very experienced aquatic ecologist that's going to be looking at that to ensure that whatever is proposed, does not significantly affect the fishery. So yeah, to Andrew's point, we recognize again another asset, as you pointed out, Kevin, and something we need to protect along with the other natural features.
Another question through the chat is, will Beach Drive be open for cars?
Well, much of the time is the current design, and I think Andrew can correct me if I'm wrong about this. It's been designed to be a really flexible street that yes will accommodate cars, and we think it's actually appropriate. Certainly, you know, on those days where there aren't a lot of people down on the waterfront for weather reasons or whatever, people we know like to go down and drive and experience it from their cars, but also to kind of support businesses during those quieter months. But of course, there will be times where there's such crowds, and I don't have to tell you how crowded it gets on the beach, where it's going to be appropriate to close it to vehicles just to keep it safe for pedestrians, to accommodate events along Beach Drive. I think that's the way it's being approached, is almost like a public space that is kind of multi-purpose. A lot of the times it's a street, right? With nice sidewalks to stroll on, with cars that run up and down it, but occasionally you want it just to be a people place.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Tim. Part of the DNA of being a Wasagan is driving around that strip. And when council came back after the last election, that was the first thing they did was they reopened Beach Drive that had been closed previously, because we recognized how important that is to a lot of folks. And there's multiple reasons for that. Some are physically not able to walk along the beachfront. I know my family, up in years, but they still enjoy going and seeing the action. So the ability to drive along the strip is important for our residents. So we get that. So absolutely, you will be able to drive along Beach Drive. The approach we've taken to street design down at the beachfront is going to be a little bit innovative for Wasaga Beach. Again, we're adopting best practices from around the world. We're building what are called flush streets. So they're curbless. What that means is they provide a better degree of accessibility. So anyone can negotiate the streets. There's no curbs to step up and step down. When you close the streets, they function like wide open plazas. There's no curbs that you trip over. So it feels like it was designed as an open plaza, but when it's open to vehicle traffic, they function quite well. And there's tricks to how you accomplish that have been incorporated into the design. So yeah, so absolutely. Beach Drive will be open as much as possible, but on busy days like July 1st long weekend, I would expect you would close it for that weekend because there's going to be so many people down there. Main Street itself is a street that has been closed for almost 40 years. We're looking to reopen Main Street, and Arnott Construction is down there. They've almost got it ready for the pavers. So I think you're going to see Main Street reopen. That's going to be an exciting thing to see. That is our historic Main Street in our community that's going to be reopened for vehicles to be able to travel down that, obviously at a slow speed. So we're very much embracing flexible streets that can serve multiple purposes, but also we're paying attention to accessibility and providing streets that are accessible for all.
Well, while we're actually waiting to see if anyone has any more questions or comments, I'll do something I should have done at the very beginning of the meeting, which is to acknowledge the people from our team here. But I think you've already, in effect, met them. Obviously, Dennis, the lead designer on the project, and James DePaulo, our project manager, all from Urban Strategies, and Andrew, of course, the CEO of the town, and Caitlin Monsma from the Economic Development, and Anna as well from Economic Development have been listening into this conversation. So we've got lots of ears here. And as I think you all know, we're recording this session, so lots of ways to kind of make sure we tracked all the questions we're getting.
One just came through. How will accessibility like wheelchair ramps be improved?
Oh, yeah, very good question. Back to that vision statement, I think we've got the word accessible maybe in there, but our feeling is that we probably need to put a little more emphasis on this because we know how important it is. Andrew's touched on it in a couple of his responses tonight, and you can appreciate. I hope that we were kind of at a very conceptual level of design with this emerging physical vision, and so it's not got me down to the level. Okay, where are we going to have a ramp down to the beach, for example, or how are we going to deal with accessibility here, here, and here? But it is a kind of just a principle that is going to guide that work as we go a little bit deeper and really figure out, for example, especially with this idea of this enhanced boardwalk going east and west from Main End. I mean, obviously that needs to be a fully accessible feature on its own, but also looking at those opportunities for connections back to parking, back to other open spaces away from the water's edge, but also access down to the beach. So this is a long-winded way of saying, stay tuned. This is something that's on our mind, and we'll be certainly when we get to articulating more details about the boardwalk in particular, but other features as well. We'll be talking about, okay, here are the ramps, right, to get you down to the beach or get you to negotiate anywhere where the terrain is changing.
Tim, I'll add a few comments. So Beach Drive that's under construction right now, there are both stairs and ramps that will take you down to the beachfront. Beach Area 2 at 3rd Street has historically been a more accessible beach for folks, equipped with Moby mats that can take you through the deep sand, which can be a little bit challenging to push a wheelchair through if you are required. So we will be looking at areas for implementing Moby mats along the beach. Obviously, you'd want those pretty close to where your ramps are. Also, historically, Nancy Island has been an area where Moby chairs have been available. So we're going to work with Nancy Island as well as with all of our staff to try and make this the most accessible area for the beachfront in all of Wasaga Beach. So that includes the design of streets that I talked about previously, the design of buildings. The buildings that were on our beachfront were built long before issues around accessibility were front and center in people's minds. So a lot of those buildings didn't have ramps, they didn't have elevators, and they were very difficult to navigate. So all the new buildings that are built are going to meet modern AODA requirements for accessibility. They'll have ramps, they'll be easy to access. So that is a good thing. In addition to all of the new boardwalks and trails that we built. In addition, I'll just share with you, recently had a number of folks approach us talking about the existing provincial buildings in Beach Area 1 and 2. Again, they were designed before modern AODA requirements. Some of the grades of those ramps that take you to those existing bathrooms are extremely severe and difficult to navigate. So as part of our audit of this infrastructure that the town is going to be assuming, we're going to be looking at all of that and identifying things that we need to do to improve some of these buildings, make them more accessible. A lot of the bathroom doors don't even have push buttons to help open the door for folks. So those are things that we're going to be looking at. Those are low hanging fruit, immediate things that we can act on. But in the long term plan, our goal is to make this very accessible for everybody. It needs to be, and so that's front and center in our mind.
Yeah, I'll just add, obviously, it's important to provide that ability to get down to the beach and to the water's edge. And so whether it's, ramps and Moby mats can do that. I know the mats don't always work as effectively as we like, so maybe we need to be thinking out ideas of wooden platforms that go out closer to the water. But the whole idea of these enhanced boardwalks is really to provide that space where anybody of any ability can kind of go down and enjoy the beachfront there. The boardwalk we have today are just great for strolling, but they aren't terribly wide. It's not like you can just stop and sit down and pull out a chair and you'll just be in the way. So really the idea of those larger boardwalks is just to make the whole beachfront just more accessible and more enjoyable throughout the year. So that at one level we're approaching accessibility in that way as well. Oh, and I also wanted to point out that in a couple of weeks, we're going to be meeting with the town's Accessibility Advisory Committee. And I know we're going to have a lot of input from that group on things we should be thinking about around accessibility.
Two more questions came through the chat. The first one is, what is the current number of parking spaces available, and what is the number of proposed parking spaces in the new plan?
Oh, boy,
Gotta
should
have
have,
these
should have,
numbers, Tim.
should have had a cheat sheet with us,
Yeah.
right? Boy, it's I don't know, James, if you can pull up that Tatham study that I think has the number of spaces.
I
Oh,
mean, to
okay, it's
to
coming to me now. There's
yeah,
a couple thousand. I think it's 2,100, 2,200 across the waterfront. I think I'm in the ballpark there. I know there's about 700 out on the spit there in that surface lot. There's just under 400, I think, in Beach Area 2 on the provincial park lands. The town, I forget how many there, but in the heart of Main End and either side of Main End on the town owned land there, I think that's like another 1,100 or so. Um, it's about, I think about 2,200 across the waterfront. Downtown, I'm less sure, but I think the way I'd answer that question is, we don't have a number for the future parking spaces. That's something we'll be figuring out in the next phase of work once we look at what the demand will be from the range of uses that are being proposed here. It's not going to be fewer than the number that are there today. That would, I think, defeat the purpose of trying to attract more people because we simply know that more people coming here means more cars coming here, and so we've got to have a parking strategy.
yeah. And if I could add to that, Tim, I think you will notice the strategy as we intensify the land uses in the main end, the core, the heart. We've got two parking structures that you can see in this plan. One is a private structure that would be built by Sunray, really to service the hotel, convention center, and all the shopping around that area. The other is a public parking structure that would be built just to the right of Spruce Street, off of Janetta. The goal there is the public spots that are displaced, we would replace in a multi-level structure. So I believe the one that we're proposing there, 4 to 5 stories, approximately 100 spots of a floor. So 4 to 500 cars, that more than replaces all of Playland parking lot. The provincial parks, specifically the parking on the spit, is not utilized to its fullest capacity, and it hasn't been for many, many years. The last 2 years, particularly with the whole reservation system that was implemented, what you would tend to find on the real busy days in the summer when 30 degrees in July, the water is beautiful, all of the parking at the main end completely full. And I very deliberately would go out on the spit and see what was happening on the spit. And one day in July, 30 degrees, all of our parking was full, and I counted 25 cars out on the spit, an area that can accommodate almost 700 cars. So the issue is not going to be a lack of parking, it's convenient parking. Some people may not want to walk from the spit to the main end and they want to be right there. So the way you address that is with structures. That's in our strategy. That will be one of the first asks that we make to make convenient parking, but also shuttles. Tim mentioned that earlier, people movers. And we're currently exploring some opportunities there to bring a people mover to the main end in the not too distant future. Similar when you go to Disney World or busy tourist places like that, when you have satellite parking, and I see that kind of like a satellite parking area. They have little trams that'll shuttle you to the main end. So those are things that we can do to maximize the use of some of that parking that isn't currently well used. But the issue, just want to emphasize, it's not an issue of lack of parking, it's convenient parking. People want to park right where they're looking to go. So we'll look at strategies to address that.
There's a follow-up on parking, Andrew, which is if there's a plan to deal with resident parking versus sort of visitor beach parking.
Absolutely. So council has made it very clear their priority is local residents first, tourists second. This council during this term has offered free parking to all residents to park in any town-owned lot. That will now extend to the additional areas that the province is transferring to the municipality. So last year, you would have had to either have a provincial parking pass or pay to go out and park on the spit or in what's called the West End here. For 2026, for this upcoming summer, you can now go park there for free. So we have just expanded significantly the amount of free parking to the residents of Wasaga Beach. Last summer, residents were using Allenwood Beach. I've never seen Allenwood so busy with locals. So we think that's the right thing to do. Council recognizes that to give your residents first crack at free parking, and then the tourists can pay the fee to subsidize all of us using the parking.
One additional question. Is there a plan to widen and add sidewalks to Mosley Street from River Road West to Beach 1?
Yes, there is a plan. That is not in the first phase. So the first phase of the road improvements at the main end are focusing on Beach Drive, First Street, Second Street, Third Street, Spruce Street, and Main Street, as well as a couple of the roundabouts on Mosley. The second phase of improvements will be Mosley Street itself. So that couple years out before we start those works. But there's actually a design already prepared for Mosley Street that looks at wider sidewalks, beautiful treed landscapes, etc. So it's quite a beautiful design. And in our discussions now with Sunray, who is going to be building a hotel that fronts on Mosley, we've actually had them set their building back so that we can actually widen the boulevards for people so that it's easier for more people to walk along the boulevard. So we're already taking that into account. Same with Stonebridge. We've had them set their buildings back so that we have the ability to widen the boulevards so that people can have a great experience walking along there.
Great. Not currently seeing any questions through the chat or hands raised.
Okay. This presentation is going to be posted on the project website, and I'll show you a QR code if you want to an address and a QR code if you want to access that. So you have an opportunity to kind of review this presentation again at your leisure. And we'd really encourage you and encourage your friends and neighbors to go online, and you'll find a link there to kind of survey tool here, map-based, and you can see from this screenshot here, excuse me, that it has that 10-year concept, emerging concept plan, and little icons, little what do you call them, James?
Pins or icons. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. For wherever where you saw the labels on the concept plan Dennis took you through, you can kind of click on them, and then the name of that proposed element will pop up, and you'll be asked to kind of evaluate it, score how much you like it. Not so much or really love it. And you also have an opportunity to provide some additional comment about it. Tell us sort of why you don't like it or why you love it or any other thoughts about that particular idea. So it's a fun little thing. You don't have to you can do as much of it as you want. You don't necessarily have to kind of comment on every single idea here, but if it's something you really, really love and want to see, it would be great if you kind of told us through this tool. On the other hand, if there's things you have an issue with or you think we need to be reconsidering, we'd love to get your feedback on that too. So this is very kind of phone friendly if you're used to doing this kind of thing on your phone. Works on all platforms. So give it a try and spread the word about it. And also there, we also have a kind of an ideas wall, a place where you can just post your sort of general comments that you have on any of the material that we've shared with you today. And by the way, the panels, I don't know if any of you had dropped by Tuesday, but we had 28 panels that basically tell a similar story to what we went through with the presentation tonight. So those panels, which do have some more text on them than the PowerPoint slides, also will be posted so that you can review them and maybe prompt some additional comments that you might want to post on the vision wall. So all accessible on the project website. And this is the address here, wasagabeach.com/imagine. And if you want to take a picture of this QR code, we'll leave it up. You can, and maybe jump to that survey now, because we know if you don't do it now, you're less likely to do it later. But again, all accessible via the project website. Okay. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Getting dark, but maybe not too late to enjoy the warm weather. Um, and again, thank you all for joining us tonight. We will, as I said early in the presentation, be back in July to share a draft of the master plan with you. We will host another event like this and more in-person events for you to learn about the plan and provide your feedback. In the meantime, if you have questions, comments, again, just there's contact information on the project website. Reach out and send any comments you have. We're happy to respond to those as they come in. All right, with that, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. We look forward to seeing or hearing from you in the summertime.